Hi, I'm Jon Sherwood, lead minister of the Asheville Church, and there has been a lot going on in our world recently, not only with the pandemic, but here in the States, we have been seeing more acts of violence that have really disrupted and shaken our country and exposed a lot of racial division yet again. And I wanted to take a minute to talk about this briefly and invite some further dialogue with people in your lives and in your immediate context. Obviously, I tend to shy away from politics from a Christian vantage point, just because I know that those can be dangerous waters. But without going too far into it, I do think suffice it to say that as disciples, as Jesus followers, Jesus said that the world will know that we are His by the love that we show for one another. And love is a huge, if not the motif of Christians and of the Bible itself. Paul said that these three remain faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And I will show you the most excellent way. Love is not rude, love is not unkind, but rather is patient, does not envy, does not boast, does not rejoice in evil, but delights in the truth, etc. And I think that there are many people in our country, in our context, and even right here in our church that are feeling a lot and feeling perhaps a lot of lack of love, even from their own brothers and sisters in the Lord. And so I wanted to read a passage, a couple of passages actually. The first one is in Isaiah chapter 1. Isaiah 1 and verse 16 says, "Wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow." Isaiah, along with many of the prophets of the Old Testament and Jesus as well in the Gospels, consistently had a message for God's people and rebuked them and called them to repent because they were not treating people well. They weren't treating people fairly. They were not treating people with love and kindness that God had instructed his people to do. And in fact, from the very beginning of God's people being brought out of Egypt in the Exodus, God set up his people to be known amongst the nations and for his name to be known through them because of their love and treatment of other people and how it was so radically different than the context of the cultures around them. And it's no different today. And I want to encourage us that when African Americans in this country feel afraid, when they feel fear, when they feel hostility, that we in the church need to make sure that we have our ears open, that we are listening, that we are seeking to understand. I'm reminded of Paul's words in 1 Corinthians 12, that all of us need each other in the body of Jesus Christ, and that when one part suffers, we all suffer. And I want to encourage us that if our brothers and sisters are suffering right now because of what's going on, we need to learn how to suffer with them. And I think that that takes some honest dialogue. In Revelation chapter 7, John, the revelator here, paints us a picture of what the new heaven and the new earth and the new Jerusalem is going to be like. He says in verse 9, Revelation 7:9, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands, and they cried out in a loud voice, 'Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb.'" John makes it very clear here that in heaven, in our eternal dwelling place, it is going to be made up of every nation, every language, every tongue. It is going to be very diverse. And that as Christians, we are to practice learning how to love one another in the midst of our diversity. And so I want to encourage you here in our local context of the Asheville Church, in your micro churches and iron groups, to have some honest dialogue about how you're feeling. For our minority brothers and sisters to be honest and to share how you're feeling and why. to talk about how this is affecting you. For some of the brothers and sisters that may be in the majority or struggle to connect with and feel, listen, and let us all be able to help each other to come back to faith in Jesus, who has brought down the dividing wall of hostility and has made between the two one humanity, Paul said, when dealing with ethnic, racial issues in his day. So let us be the light of the world. Let us be the salt of the earth. Let us be people who are known by others and that they know us as God's people, that God will be seen in us because of the love that we have for one another.